देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी. Hare Krishna, Dandat Pranam. Now today we continuing and completed today with the chapter 11 Srimad Bhagwatam, Canto 11, chapter 10, the nature of free activities. Shloka number from 29 to 37. 30 to 37, sorry. लोकालानां मद्भयं कल्पजीविनां ब्रह्मण अपि भयं मत्तः द्विपरार्थ पर आयुषः गुणाः सृजन्ति कर्माणि गुण अनुसृजते गुणान् कर्मफलानि असि. यावत् स्यात् गुणगम्यं तावत् नानात्वम् आत्मनः नानात्वम् आत्मनः यावत् भारतता यावत् स्वतन्त्रत्वं ताश्वर भयं ये समुपासीन्ते मुह्यन्ति शुचार्पिता.
Mataji, your network is not clear. Your network is not clear. Can you connect audio from mobile?
Yes.
काल आत्मा गमो लोक स्वभावो धर्म एव च इति मां बहुतः प्राहु गुणव्यतिकरे सति. श्री उद्धव उवाच गुणेषु वर्तमानोऽपि देहजेषु मनःपावृत्तः गुणेन बध्यते देहि बध्यते वा कथं विभो. No voice, no audio. कथं
वर्तेत विहरेत कहीं वा जायेत लक्षणैः किं भुञ्जीत भुञ्जितोत विसृजेत विसृजेत आसित याति वा एतत् अच्युत मे ब्रूहि प्रश्नं प्रश्नविदां वर नित्यबद्ध नित्यमुक्तः एक एव इति मे भ्रमः. Translation and purport by the Srila Prabhupada. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In all the planetary systems, from the heavenly to the hellish, and for all of the great demigods who live for 1000 yuga cycles, there is fear to me in my form of time. Even Brahma, who possesses the supreme lifespan of 3,11,040 crores years, is also afraid of me. The material senses create material activities, either pious or sinful, and the modes of nature set the material senses into motion. The living entity, being fully engaged by the material senses and modes of nature, experiences the various results of fruitive work. As long as the living entity thinks that the modes of material nature have separate existence, he will be obliged to take birth in many different forms and will experience varieties of material existence. Therefore, the living entity remains completely dependent on fruitive activities under the mode of nature. The conditioned soul, who remains dependent on fruitive activities under the material modes of nature will continue to fear me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, since I impose the result of one's fruitive activities. Those who accept the material concept of life, taking the variegatedness of the modes of nature to be factual, devote themselves to material enjoyment, and are therefore always absorbed in lamentation and grief. When there is agitation and interaction of the material modes of nature, the living entities then describe me in various ways, such as all powerful time, the self, Vedic knowledge, the universe, one's own nature, religious ceremonies, and so on. Sri Uddhav said, O my Lord, a living entity situated within the material body is surrounded by the modes of nature and the happiness and distress that are born of activities caused by these modes. How is it possible that he is not bound by by this material encirclement? It may also be said that the living entity is ultimately transcendental and has nothing to do with the material world. Then how is he ever bound by material nature? O my Lord, Achyut, the same living entity is sometimes described as eternally conditioned and at other time as eternally liberated. I am not able to understand, therefore, the actual situation of the living entity. You, my Lord, are the best of those who are expert in answering philosophical questions. Please explain to me the symptoms by which one can tell the difference between a living entity who is eternally liberated and one who is eternally conditioned. In what various ways would they remain situated, enjoy life, eat, evaluate, lie down, sit, or move about? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. There are many statements throughout Vedic literature proving that even the great demigods fear the time potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even in the heavenly planets, there is no relief from the miseries of material life. No conditioned soul can live eternally, as clearly demonstrated by the deaths of Hiranyakashipu and other demons. Since even the demigods fear the time potency of the personality of Godhead, one may easily conclude that Krishna is the absolute truth and that he is eternally the supreme controller of everything and everyone. Lord Krishna is the only real shelter. It has been explained in the previous verses that the living entity under the control of fruitive activities is pushed down into a hellish condition of life. In this verse, the exact nature of the living entity's dependence on the fruitive activities is described. One can observe that one's activities are performed by the material senses and that the living entity himself is merely conscious of such activities. One may be worshipping the demigods, enjoying sex, or performing agricultural or intellectual activities. But in all cases, the material senses are performing the work. One may argue that the spirit soul initiates the activities of the senses and thus is the ultimate doer. But such false egotism is negated in this verse by the statement Guna Srujanti Karmani Guna Anushrujate Gunan. The three modes of nature, goodness, passion, ignorance, stimulate the functions of the material senses and the living entity coming under the control of a particular mode of nature merely experiences the good and bad results of his work. This does not negate the concept of free will, since the living entity chooses to associate with different modes of nature by one's eating, speaking, sexual activities, occupation, etc. One associates with various modes of nature and acquires a particular mentality. But in all cases, the modes of nature themselves are acting, not the living entity. The word asau in this verse indicates that the living entity falsely considers himself to be the performer of work carried out by nature as stated in Bhagavad Gita 3.27. Prakrute kriyamanaani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimud atma karta aham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities which are in actuality carried out by nature. The conditioned soul can be liberated simply by giving up this false egoistic conception of life and taking to the devotional service of the Lord, by which the living entity or marginal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead escapes the disturbing influence of the external potency called Maya. In the devotional service of the Lord, the liberated entity realizes his actual form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. It is natural to perform activities with a desire to achieve a good result. The best result, however, can be attained by one who engages in the devotional service of the Lord with a desire to be reinstated in his constitutional position as the Lord's loving servant. In this way, the tendency to exploit one's own activities for a particular result can be purified. Then the modes of nature and the material senses will no longer engage the living entity in illusion. The living entity is by nature blissful, and when his illusion ceases, all suffering comes to an end. The liberated soul is then fit to reside in Vaikuntha, the kingdom of God. The word guna vaishamyam indicates forgetfulness of Lord Krishna, which causes one to see material varieties as separate states of existence. The living entity, being attracted to material varieties and having faith in them, is forced to experience these varieties in different material bodies, such as those of demigods, pigs, businessmen, insects, and so on. According to the Karma Mimamsa philosophers, there is no transcendental living entity who is the background of all existence. They accept material variety as the final reality. However, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the actual basis of everything. Everything is within him, and he is within everything. A pure duty of the Lord sees Krishna everywhere and sees all of the variegated modes of nature as the potency of Lord Krishna. One who does not see Lord Krishna will certainly see material variegatedness as the supreme reality. Such vision is called Maya or gross illusion and is similar to the vision of an animal. Parantantra means one will remain caught in the web of pretty activities unless one gives up this superficial separatist vision. The living entity is bound in the network of illusion. But although he can understand that he is dependent upon superior powers, he does not wait to serve the Supreme Lord. He thus becomes filled with fear of life itself, desiring material sense gratification. The living entity, like the demon Kaunsa, always fears destructions of his material arrangement, remaining addicted to the flavors of material nature. One gradually sinks down into an irrational form of life. Maya has two potencies. The first covers the living entity, and the second throws him down into hellish condition of life. When one is covered by Maya, one loses all power of discrimination, and Maya then throws such a fool into the darkness of ignorance. When one wrongly considers oneself to be independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, one becomes a worshipper of temporary material objects, hoping to enjoy material sense gratification. And as one grows older, one's life becomes filled with fear and anxiety. A conditioned soul considers himself to be in control of his life, but since he does not have any actual controlling potency, his situation is contradictory and not at all pleasing. As all of one's material possessions are taken away by time, one becomes filled with lamentation. All in all, material life is truly abominable, and it is only because of dense illusion that we accept it as satisfactory. One can experience the potency of the personality of Godhead by observing how different species of life, demigods, human beings, animals, fish, birds, insects, plants, etc., gradually evolve their nature and activities. Each species of life executes a particular process of sense gratification, and this function is called the dharma of the species. Lacking knowledge of the personality of Godhead, ordinary persons catch a glimpse of the Lord's potency in the above mentioned manifestations. Srila Madhvacharya has cited the following information from the Tantra Bhagavad. The Lord is called Kala or time because he is the mover and controller of all material qualities. Because he is complete and perfect, he is called Atma or the self, and he is the personification of all knowledge. The word Swabhava indicates that the Lord fully controls his own destiny, and as the maintainer of everyone, he is called Dharma. On one of the liberated platform can achieve unlimited bliss by worshipping the personality of Godhead, whereas those who are ignorant of the Lord try to find happiness by concocting other objects of worship. If one stubbornly imagines that anything is independent of the Lord, one will remain in the grip of the illusory network of the Lord's potency. Seeing the inevitability of the destructions of material things, one is constantly fearful and perpetually laments in the darkness of ignorance. In such darkness, there is no question of happiness. Therefore, one should never think that anything is independent of the personality of Godhead. As soon as one considers anything to be independent of the Lord, one is immediately gripped by the Lord's illusory network called Maya. One should always remain humble and obedient to the personality of Godhead, even when one is liberated, and thus one will achieve the supreme spiritual happiness. Due to the influence of the modes of nature, the material body generates fruitive activities, which in turn generate material happiness and distress. This material chain reaction is indicated by the word Deha Jeshu. The personality of Godhead has shown Uddhava that the actual goal of life is liberation, not sense gratification. Although the Lord has indicated that the living entity is liberated by devotional service performed with knowledge and renunciation, Uddhava apparently does not understand the specific means of perfection. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Uddhava's question implies that we observe even in the activities of liberated souls such external activities as eating, sleeping, walking, hearing, speaking, etc., which are functions of the gross and subtle bodies. Thus, if even liberated souls are situated within the gross and subtle material bodies, then how are they not bound by the material modes of nature? If it is argued that the living entity, like the sky, which never mixes with any other object and therefore is bound, then one may ask how such a transcendental living entity can never be bound by material nature. In other words, how would material existence be possible? In order to completely clarify the path of Krishna consciousness, Uddhava present this question to the Supreme Personality of God, Personality Lord Krishna in the kingdom of Maya. There are innumerable speculations about the Supreme Lord, who is variously described as non-existence, or as possessing material qualities, or as being devoid of all qualities, or as being a neuter objects like ennunced. But through mundane speculation, it is not possible to understand the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Uddhava wants to clear the path of spiritual liberation so that people can actually understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As long as one is affected by the modes of nature, perfect understanding is not possible. Lord Krishna will now describe to Uddhava further details of spiritual emancipation on the road back home, back to Godhead. In previous verses, Lord Krishna has explained to Uddhava that an eternally liberated soul is beyond the three modes of material nature, since a liberated soul is considered to be beyond even the superior mode of goodness. How can he be recognized by false identification with the modes of nature which produce one's own material body? One is bound by illusion. On the other hand, by transcending the modes of nature, one is liberated. However, in ordinary activities such as eating, evacuating, relaxing, sitting, and sleeping, a liberated soul and a conditioned soul appear to be the same. Therefore, Uddhava is inquiring, by what symptoms can I recognize that one living entity is performing such external activities without false ego? And by what symptoms can I recognize one who is working under the illusory bondage of material identification? This is difficult because the ordinary bodily functions of the liberated and conditioned personalities appear similar. Uddhava has approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead, taking him as his personal spiritual master, and wants to be enlightened about how to understand the difference between material and spiritual life. Since the living entity is sometimes called eternally conditioned, how could he ever be considered eternally liberated, or vice versa? This is an apparent contradiction which will be cleared up by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus end the purpose of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 11th canto, 10th chapter of the Srimad Bhagwatam, entitled The Nature of Free Activity. Now prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Ena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. श्री चैतन्य मनाभीष्टम स्थापितम येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यम ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्दे हम श्री गुरोः श्रीयुत पदकमलं श्री गुरून् वैष्णवान् च श्री रूपं साग्रजातम् अवधूतं परिजन सहितं कृष्ण देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पदान् सगणललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांच नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यादि पाश्चात देशतारिणे कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा दंडवत प्रणाम. We today completing the Srimad Bhagwatam Canto 11 chapter 10, the nature of fruitive activities, and we try to understand from the shloka number 32. Here, in this shloka, the Supreme Personality means Krishna describing the nature of the fruitive activities in all the planetary systems, from heaven to the hellish, for all, uh, though demigods or like an ant, they all peer to the Lord Krishna, of the time, form of time. Even Brahma who possesses, how is Brahma's life? Brahma's life 3,11,040 crore years. This is so vast, life of Brahma. Though his life is vast, he is always in fear for the death. So the here it is said that Krishna is the absolute truth, and that it is eternally the supreme controller of everything and everyone. And so Lord is the only real shelter of all. Then uh, in other shlokas they describe that the guna srujanti karmani guna anusrujeta gunan. It describe about the mode of nature. There are three modes of nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance, and who stimulate the functions of material senses and the living entity coming under the control of a particular mode of nature merely experience the good or bad results of his work. And when eating, sleeping, speaking, occupation, etc., one associate with the modes of nature and acquires a particular mentality, and that according to natures themselves are acting not on the living entity. Means if any influence act or act, that act is due to the nature of the modes of nature, uh, not by the living entity. Here word also is indicate the living entity falsely considers himself to be the performer of the work carried out by nature. And the shloka they told here about prakriti kriyane gun nahi karmani karta ham विमूढ़ आत्मा कर्ता मन्यते अहंकार विमूढ़ आत्मा कर्ता इति मन्यते. And it is natural to perform activities with the desire to achieve good result, the best result, can be obtained by engaging devotional service of the Lord with the desire to be reinstated in his constitutional position. Then, one who does not see Lord Krishna will certainly see material variegatedness as the supreme reality. Such a vision is called Maya. And Paratantram means one who remains caught in the web of fruitive activities unless one gives up this superficial separatist vision. Maya has two potencies. One, the living entity, and the second throws him into the hellish condition. When one is covered by Maya, one loses all power of discrimination. And Maya, when throws such a fool into the darkness of ignorance, when one wrongly considers oneself to the independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one becomes worshipper of temporary material object, hoping to enjoy material sense gratification, and one older one's life become filled with fear and anxiety. So all in material life is truly abominable, and it is only because dense illusion that we accept it as satisfactory. And like that, it is describing. And then when Uddhava came in confusion, like us, we also come in confusion. We are not able to understand what we do and what we are not do. It is right or not. That time here told that told to Krishna that the actual goal of life is not though the Lord has indicated that the living entity is liberated by devotions performed with knowledge and Uddhava does not understand specific means of performing. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti told the meaning of Uddhava's statement that occupation implies that we observe even in the activities of the liberated soul, external activities as eating, sleeping, walking, etc. And even little are situated within the gross and subtle material of bodies. Both the situation see as the same. So not understanding how is it take to mind. Such transcendental living entity can never bound by material nature. In other words, how would material existence be possible in order to completely clarify the path of Krishna consciousness? Uddhava presents this question to the Supreme Personality, Lord Godhead. And lastly, the living entity, sometimes called eternally conditioned. How could he be considered eternally liberated or vice versa? This is an apparent contradiction which will be of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so the next chapter will be what? What is the symptoms of the liberated soul and conditioned soul? We will try to understand from tomorrow. Now, Prabhu will tell you some points clearly, which I am not able to discuss.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Vanchakalpatarubhya kripa sindhubhe evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavbhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. The Vaishnava or who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he should be observing the rules and regulations found in Pancharatra and other revealed scriptures. So, if you go through the chapter which we have covered, it is very clear the instruction. According to our own natural qualities and work, we should follow the code of Varnashram in a spirit free from motivation. So there should not be any motivation. We should be okay, whatever is coming, it's coming for my good. It is Krishna's mercy. I have to accept it. Because the so called knowledge that we receive through our material senses, mind, intelligence, they're useless. And the comparison which was given is dreams. So the dreams experienced by a sleeping person attached to sense gratification. So they should give up work performed for sense gratification and accept work as a matter of duty, kartavya, karma. When one has come to understand something of the truth, we should give up material work performed out of duty. So there are stages now, and simply engage in the service of bona fide spiritual master, who is the representative of God. So he is a manifested representative of the personality of Godhead. So this is the stage which has come, which is being explained in this chapter. So first, we stop all work for sense gratification. We do only with that which is our duty. And then when we do what is our duty and come to the understanding of that Sat, the truth, we start doing only service for Krishna, service of Guru. Now, the servant of the Guru should have very firm affection for the Guru. You should be anxious to receive from him knowledge of absolute truth. And we should be devoid of envy and tendency to talk nonsense. Now, this is very important. Otherwise, this jiva, this tongue, it's the biggest culprit. And that is why you see there are two things which are recommended for the tongue. One is to ensure that we keep on chanting Harinam Sankirtan, and two, we take only Krishna Prasada. Once we do it, then we'll be able to get out of the tendency to talk nonsense. The second part which has come out is the distinction between the soul, the gross body, and the subtle material body. So now the soul, which is a spirit soul, has entered into the material body and it has accepted bodily functions according to reactions of past activities. Therefore, only the bona fide transcendental spiritual master is capable of demonstrating pure knowledge. So indirectly what was recommended is that our karma balance, it has to be zero, neither positive nor negative. Now Krishna, while making Uddhava understand, is talking about other philosophies as well, like Gemini, atheists, those who are atheists, because they accept regulated material work as purpose of life. But Krishna refutes this when he explains that the embodied soul, which has come into contact with segmented material, takes upon itself a perpetual change of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi, and therefore forced to suffer consequent happiness and distress. Krishna is now explaining the reasons why someone is unhappy, why someone is in anxiety, why someone is feeling distressed. It is because of this consequential understanding that we are the body and forgetting of our real nature. Now we need to understand there is no possibility that if we are attached to fruits of material work, we can achieve any substantial goal in life. Even the pleasures of heaven and other destinations, which are achieved by different yagyas, even they are temporary. After one's enjoyment is finished, we have to return to the mortal sphere and be a part of lamentation and suffering. So if you are going to continue on the path of materialism, there is certainly no uninterrupted natural happiness. But we are parts and parcels of Krishna. And we want to have happiness because Krishna is Sat Chit Ananda, Ananda. And because we are parts and parcels of Krishna, we have similar qualities of Krishna. We also wish to be happy. But then We need to understand for that what is our real position. Even Brahma, the lifespan of Brahmaji was given in text 30. It's so many multi-billion crores of years. Matlab, I cannot even imagine. There were 9 zeros beyond 3,11,040. But what does he do? He still has to come back. And if we use material senses, we create material activities, whether pious or sinful, the modes of nature comes into picture. And thus, this cycle continues. The fruitive work continues. So we need to come to a conclusion and do not think that the modes of nature have separate existence. Because if we don't, then we'll be dependent on fruitive activities under the three gunas. And if we remain dependent on fruitive activities, then we will continue to fear Krishna. Because it is Krishna who is imposing the results of the activities. So anyone who accepts material concept of life, they continue material enjoyment, but they are always absorbed in lamentation and grief. Whenever there is agitation, interaction of material modes of nature, then the living entity thinks about Krishna as Kala, time, Vedic knowledge, self, universe. That needs to be avoided. The other day, I was speaking to some students and they were requesting for a Discover Yourself class from me. And I was explaining, and one of the students was saying that all of a sudden his results came. He could not clear two subjects. He is so disturbed that he's not able to concentrate on even eating. And actually, factually, he said that since 5 days he has not eaten anything. Because additionally, what happened was one of his friends also left this material world. And the kind of stress he felt, he said, I'm so afraid, so fearful that every day I'm keeping myself awake and chanting the Narsimha Stotra, the Narsimha Kavach. I don't know what to do. This is situation. We are remembering Krishna when we are afraid. While the practicality had to be, which I explained to him, that you remember Krishna not out of fear, but out of pure love, so that you serve him and in return achieve his love. If we continue within this material body, then the modes of nature they are going to keep surrounding us. And happiness, distress, they'll keep on coming. But then there is a chance that we can ultimately transcend and get nothing to do with material world. We can be eternally conditioned. We can be eternally liberated. So those are the things we need to understand how we can achieve that eternal liberation. Because just eating, mating, defending, sleeping, even animals are doing. So why do we need a human life for that? The human life has been given after many, many births. Bhunam Janmanamante. And the objective is Athato Brahma Jigyasa. We have to inquire about the truth so that we understand. And we have to accept our eternal position or servitude. We have to become humble. We have to leave away all our ego, all our pride, because they are just obstacles on our way back home, back to Godhead. We have to train ourselves in such a way that if anyone is asking us to leave the material body, we should not be worried. We should be happy, chant, and leave the material body. That should be our mode. That should be our consciousness when we are leaving this body. And that is something which is possible if we are consistently, continuously keeping ourselves engaged in remembering Krishna through the chanting of his holy name, as recommended by the Shastras, chanting of the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा